Hey guys, in this quick tutorial, I'm going to show you how to disable the built-in color pickers for paragraph and heading blocks. And if I quickly show you, I've already got WordPress set up locally. I've got an example project here, and this is actually going to be part of my WordPress block development course. But I got asked in my Facebook group, the Web Dev Education Facebook group, how to disable the color pickers for text for the Gutenberg block editor. So it's a really simple method. And of course, WordPress documentation is not great, but here's the really simple method you can use to remove the color pickers for paragraph blocks. So I'm just going to demonstrate with a paragraph block. So we can see on the side, we've got our text color picker for the text, background, and link. Now we can disable just one of these. We can disable all of them. We can disable any number of them. Also, we could disable typography if we wanted to. And we've got dimensions. We could also disable that. And any combination of these, you don't have to disable all at once. You could just disable padding, for example. But I'm going to use the color palette as an example here. If I go back to my plugin PHP file, you can also add this to the functions.php file, but I'm just going to add it to a plugin PHP file. It's going to work exactly the same. We want to hook into the block type metadata filter. So we can use add_filter from WordPress. And we want to hook into the block_type_metadata filter. And let's specify our function. Let's just say something like filter metadata. And let's create that function then. Of course, we need our semicolon. So let's create our function filter metadata. Now this filter metadata will be passed the metadata for each of our blocks. And specifically, it will be passed the entire definition for every block's block.json file. So we can find, for example, the paragraph block. We can find the definition of this block.json in the official WordPress Gutenberg GitHub repo. So I've already got it open in my browser here. Just head on over to github.com/WordPress/Gutenberg. And we need to go into packages. If we scroll down into the block library, let's click on through to the block library. Let's click on through to source and let's scroll down until we find the paragraph. So let's click on through to the paragraph component and we can see we have a block.json file here. And this is the entire definition for the paragraph block. So what we can do with, if we quickly refer back to the code, what we can do with the block type metadata filter is completely override any value within this block.json definition. So if we scroll all the way down, we can see that this paragraph block has a supports property with color. And we can simply just remove this color property from supports and we'll no longer be able to select the text, background, and link colors. So let's test this out then. If we go back to our code, for our metadata, first of all, we want to check to see if the metadata, and we want to check to see if the name on block.json. So again, let's quickly refer to the paragraph block.json. We want to check to see if the name is core/paragraph because we only want to affect the block.json definition for the core/paragraph block. We don't want it to affect any other block. Now, if you wanted it to affect every single block, including custom blocks, you don't need to add this if statement, but I'm just going to demonstrate on the core/paragraph block. So back in our code then, if we check to see if metadata name is equal to core/paragraph, we can just override the metadata supports property, and specifically we can unset the color property. So let's go unset metadata supports and color. So this will just remove the color object from supports. Then we always need to return the metadata from the filter metadata function. So let's go return metadata. Now if we hit save on this and take a look in the browser, let's give our page a refresh and let's select our paragraph text now, and there we go. We no longer have access to the color palette. Now we can do exactly the same for typography. If we take a look in the block.json, if we scroll down again to the supports, we can see that it has support for typography. And I'm going to show just a single example here. So instead of removing the entire typography, let's remove, if we take a look at the typography, We can see we've got all this here, so let's just remove line height. So we can do that if we take a look at block.json again. So we need to access typography and line height. So back in the code then, we can also unset metadata. We want to unset the supports, typography, and line height. And let me just check to see if it's capital H there. So yeah, line height like so. And so if we save this now and take a look in the browser, let's give our page a refresh again. Let's select our paragraph block. Now let's take a look to see what typography options we have. And there we go. We no longer have access to the line height. So this is a really simple way we can remove specific out-of-the-box customizations with WordPress for any block. So this is just not specific to core blocks. We can also do this for third-party blocks. So let me quickly demonstrate one last thing. If I wanted to add a heading block here, let's say test in here, we can see on the right we still have access to the color palette. So if I wanted to disable the color palette for every single block, we don't need to add then back in our code. We can just remove this if statement like so. Let's save this now and take a look in the browser, and let's give it a refresh. And there we go. We no longer have access to the color palette in any of our blocks. But if I wanted to just remove, let's say, the background option for the color, instead of unsetting the supports and color property, let's quickly refer to the paragraph block.json. We want to unset the supports, color, and experimental default controls. So we'll do that first of all. Back in the code, let's unset metadata, supports, color, and experimental default controls. Then we also want to set a gradient and background to false on the color property. So we can set then metadata supports color and access the gradients property and set that equal to false, and do exactly the same for background. So if we save this now then and take a look in the browser, let's give it a refresh. Now let's select our paragraph text, and there we go. We can see we have access to the text and link color, but not the background color.